Good morning, this is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights. Today we are absolutely delighted to welcome Seb Alex, a very high profile animal rights activist who uses social media to great effect to advocate for animals. Seb is actually in Barcelona at the moment, so welcome and thank you very much for giving up your time.
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
You're very welcome. If you wouldn't mind, we'll just go straight into the questions. Some of them are quite long, but we'll just kind of just see how they go, okay? So first of all, I know that your academic background is sustainable architecture. So clearly in your career path at that time, you were already conscious of our impact on the environment, but you also worked in the United Nations refugee program. So you're working directly with vulnerable people. How did you get involved in that? And how did your academic background and you work with the refugee program prepare you for your work with animal advocacy?
So I started studying architecture when I still lived in Lebanon. And when I finished the bachelor, I wanted to do the master's in sustainable architecture because I did want to work in the future on a better world, a more sustainable world. And then when I finished my studies, I got a job here in Barcelona actually, I first got a job with the United Nations for the refugee program. And that really opened up a whole world for me where I actually understood how much people care or don't care. And the things that refugees and people who come from less privileged areas have to go through. And of course, that was something that really made me realize how important it is to do such work. After that, I also worked in an engineering and architecture company, and that was for around a year. I was in charge of the international projects. And that was very different from the job that I did before. It was actually a multinational company. I didn't like any of it. I didn't like the lack of ethics. And then eventually, as I had already started doing activism and I had seen the impact that activism has on the street or whatever it is that you're doing, I thought, well, what if I quit my job and I just give my time to activism? If I'm able to receive enough donations to continue because people see value in what I'm doing, I'll continue. And if I don't, that's completely fine. I can go back to working, whether that's as a waiter or whatever it is that I have to do to have shelter and food. That's more than enough for me. And things went well. I started doing activism shortly after that, and here I am. It's been almost 4 years now since that day.
You have a lot of fans. Fans is probably the wrong words, but we do. You know, a lot of people in our group watch you. Laura watches you, and I watch you as well, and a couple of others. And we love the way you do it. You know, your style is just so laid back and friendly and approachable, and it's great. So can you tell us about your vegan journey and how easy you found it being vegan as you've traveled across Europe and home in Lebanon?
Yeah, so I actually first went vegetarian as a result of lack of knowledge of veganism. It was a friend of mine who pointed out my hypocrisy of loving and protecting the cat we had adopted versus eating and even hunting animals. And so I went vegetarian because of her. Because I couldn't justify it. She showed me a video called Farm to Fridge. It was around 12 minutes long video. And when I finished watching, I thought, all right, so I obviously have to come up with a justification, and I couldn't find any. So I became vegetarian. And then around 8 years after that, I was thinking about veganism because I had met one vegan who happened to be a doctor as well. And he had told me that I can get all the proteins I need, because obviously I asked him, what about proteins? and that I can be healthy and thrive on a vegan diet. So around 8 years after being vegetarian, I was wondering about the whole dairy side. Like, okay, I'm vegetarian, but why am I actually drinking the breast milk of the mother of another animal?
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to me in any way, evolution-wise, nature-wise. You know, it doesn't make any sense that one species relies on the breast milk of the mothers of another species. So I looked into it and I landed on a few videos and documentaries. I watched Gary Yourofsky's speech and then another speech called 101 Reasons to Go Vegan. And then I watched Earthlings. But by the time I started to watch Earthlings, I had already made up my mind. So I actually stopped Earthlings after 20 minutes and I was like, I'm just going vegan anyway. So And then I watched a few more documentaries like When a Tree Falls, which is about the Earth Liberation Front, and Behind the Mask, which is about the Animal Liberation Front. So I went vegan that day. I immediately bought a book as well to understand the whole nutrition side and some recipes and things like that. At the time, it wasn't as available or widely famous the way it is now. But I mean, I was still lucky. I mean, some people went vegan in the 70s or 60s or even like 1,000 years ago. So that was my journey. And then almost a year after that, I started doing activism.
Yeah. So how easy have you found it to access vegan food as you've traveled across? I mean, because I dare say different countries are in different stages of veganism.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to Lebanon, it's really easy. Most of the Lebanese food is vegan anyway. And if it's not vegan, there's always the vegan options, the vegan versions. Not like you're not going to have to go to a vegan restaurant to get them. You can still get them in the same restaurants. You just order the vegan version. And across Europe, it's been really easy as well. The only time where I actually had some kind of difficulty was I had to catch like an 11-hour long train to go from one city to another city in Germany when I was giving lectures 2 years ago. And I was starving. There was nothing I could get on the train. And then when I arrived, in between, I had to do like a change of platforms. I just went up to this shop and I asked him if he has anything vegan in it. And the guy said no. And I said, listen, just get me some bread with lettuce, ketchup, and tomato. And that's what I had. I mean, that's the most difficulty I've had in 8 years or 7 years. I think that's completely fine. I still had something to eat. It's not like I starved at the end. No, I mean, it was just like a small inconvenience, but it's fine. I mean, I still had food. So it's been relatively quite easy. I think the difficult part is the first 2 weeks. People have to get used to it. And I think that's completely normal as well. If you change such a long time habit, you're gonna have to need some time to get used to it, and that's fine.
Yeah. Now, I know that the Lebanese vegans were set up to address the animal-related issues after the Beirut explosion in 2020 November. Obviously, a massive human impact, but obviously animals were affected by it as well. So can you tell us a little bit about their work and how you collaborate with them?
Yeah, so Lebanese vegans already existed for many years now. And what happened was it was mainly a social media platform. But also the person who founded Lebanese Vegans, George Hayek, he runs a hospital in Lebanon, and he had been already doing events at the hospital. He screened Dominion, he screened What the Health, he brought people to give workshops and lectures and things like that. And for 2 years, he was working on that. Now, when the explosion happened, I had just finished packing when the explosion happened. I was about to go to the airport to go to Lebanon, and my family immediately messaged me. They said, "Don't come. Something's going on. We don't know yet." And I had a few hours until I go to the airport, so I thought, okay, I mean, it's not gonna be worse than anything I've lived through when I grew up in Lebanon. But when I saw the videos, I was really shocked because it was one of the strongest non-nuclear explosions in history. So I went there, and by the time I got there, we had already launched like our campaign to immediately distribute pamphlets, ready food or boxes, because people either had their full home like exploded into pieces, destroyed, so they didn't have access to a kitchen, so they needed ready food. And other people had to spend a lot of their money to fix their houses, so they didn't have money to buy food. So we bought them, then we brought them the boxes instead. And at the same time, we also used the money to pay the bills of any animal who had been injured from the explosion. And throughout the months of August and September, we distributed around 2,500 meals. $1 Million Vegan also reached out to us and helped us, supported us with this campaign. And a small organization from the UK called, if I'm not mistaken, Vegans Against World Hunger, they also collaborated with us on this campaign. Yeah.
Yeah. It must have been a pretty scary time as well. I mean, you kind of alluded there to, you obviously it's not yet, you haven't you've obviously seen this sort of thing before, but I suppose now you're probably in a better position to help animals.
Yeah.
Where obviously growing up when you were younger, it was much more difficult, and you probably didn't even realize at the time. So how are vegans perceived and animal rights activists perceived in Lebanon? I mean, if you're saying that the vegan food is so easy to access, presumably you have a
Yeah.
pretty good understanding of it. And what have you noticed
Yeah.
about the changes in perception about veganism across the world during your travels over the last decade? I mean, I know I've been vegan for getting on for 11 years now, and I know that it was quite extreme. You kind of like extreme at the beginning, and like now it's much more acceptable. So,
Mhm.
so in terms of the Lebanon and and your travel and everything, how are you? What's the perception, do you think?
So in Lebanon, it's really interesting. It was actually going really well. In 1 year, Beirut went from one vegan restaurant to 12 vegan
Wow.
restaurants. But that was all not only before the explosion, but also before the pandemic and before
Yeah.
the revolution and the strike and the economical collapse. So obviously that number is not the same anymore. But in general, there's just a very big interest in animal rights activism.
Uh-huh.
On TV, when they talk about veganism, they're not like, for example, like Piers Morgan. They're actually interested. They ask the questions, they ask the questions on TV, like, why this? Or how do you do this? How do you do that? Why do you do this?
Yeah.
There is the interest, which is really nice for change. There's definitely a downside, and that is that there's so many existing problems in Lebanon since forever, that people have this kind of apathy to the point where when you do something, they always bring out whataboutism. So they say like, oh, what about this? What about that? Or like they say, for example, very short, like recent example. I was at an osteopath because I had some issue with my shoulder, and we were talking, and he said, what do you do? And I said, I'm an animal rights activist, and that's what we do in Lebanon. And he said, humans don't even have rights in Lebanon. And the thing is, like, it's he kind of has a point. Like, it's really bad in Lebanon, so they struggle to understand why we're doing it for other animals. But the thing is, like, first of all, it's completely fine to concentrate on one thing, because it doesn't mean that you're against the other. Second of all, you can concentrate on both.
Yeah.
It, like, you don't have to, but you can. So concentrating on animal rights doesn't mean you're ignoring human rights issues. There's so many people who work on human rights issues, and that's amazing, but that doesn't mean that others shouldn't work on other issues. The same way, if there's so many scientists or doctors working on a cure for cancer, doesn't mean they don't care about the cure for AIDS or something like that. Different people work on different things. So I would say so far it's going really well in Lebanon, and we'll see how it continues.
Yeah. On your website, you've got there's a space called Why Vegan, which is divided into 3 areas: for the animals, for the environment, and for humans. Now, in the areas for environment and humans, you've got the facts as well as links to videos. But for the animals, you've just got like one link to Dominion, which I think is quite powerful because it's like, this says it all.
Yeah.
So what is it about this particular documentary which appeals to you in terms of converting people to veganism?
Well, first of all, it not only covers every single industry, but it actually explains the notion of speciesism. And I think that's really important. I think people should understand that. Now, I will eventually update the website. I would like to add some books, especially ones from Tom Regan, whose work has really changed my activism. But I really think that people should come face to face with what they're causing. If they see what they're doing to these animals, I'm pretty sure, I mean, it has been shown that this kind of footage, and this is my experience as well on social media, the amount of people that message me when I put out graphic footage is much more, and people are much more committed than when I say something about the environment or health, because a lot of people don't want to say this, but it is completely possible to eat meat every once in a while and still be very healthy. So the health part doesn't really like ensure that you're going to get a full vegan. And same with the environment. If you're at a birthday and someone had a cake with eggs in it, chances are, if you only care about the environment, you're not going to take it as seriously. But if you actually oppose the violation of other animals' rights, then no matter what happens, you're going to stick to it.
Yeah, you talking about your social media stuff. There's just came to my mind there. One which struck a chord with me was the one you did about friends, not food, and you were saying
Yeah.
that you don't want to be animals' friends because a lot of, I mean, I've got T-shirts which say "friends, not food" on them, and I kind of get what you know. It was really, really powerful because I thought actually it's true. When you know you can't be friends to every human, you wouldn't like every human. So why would you translate that to another species? Why would you translate that to animals? It's about fundamental respect, isn't it? You know, it's just about respecting their right to be safe and free from harm. But I thought that was really, really good. In your advocacy work, you've been involved in lots of activism. So you've done, you know, vigils, street activism, workshops, university talks, all sorts of things. Do you have a preferred method of working, or you know, do they all work in different ways?
Yeah. I think that the most impact that I've seen was lectures in universities and schools, but also community organizing with things that like direct action, civil disobedience. I think these two hand in hand are very important.
Yeah.
I do think political activism is also very important, but it's just not something that I'm educated in or trained to do.
Yeah. So you're talking about the direct action and things. So have you been involved in any sort of direct action, you know, like liberating animals or anything like that? Yeah.
I've been part in Meet the Victims events.
Yeah. Yeah.
And civil disobedience, I think in general is really important, just because it usually really grabs media's attention and starts a discussion about what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And regarding saving animals, you know, I think everyone should consider helping these animals, because if we were in their place, we would want that. I think a lot of people only imagine breaking in somewhere to rescue an animal, but a lot of times you can also talk to farmers. I have been able to save chickens by talking to farmers and telling them, listen, like, I would really appreciate it. I'm not going to give you any money for it, but if you're up to give me a chicken or two, I would really appreciate that. And they've been open to the idea before, so people can try that as well.
Yeah. So when you're talking to someone who's not vegan, but they're genuinely interested in finding out more, how and where do you start, and kind of how do you direct them?
So I make sure that they understand, first of all, the whole idea of animal rights. I mean, depending on how much time I have with them, but I think one good website that I've been using a lot is called veganbootcamp.org. It's similar to Challenge 22, but it's 30 days instead of 22 days. And they also have a lot of like classes and documentaries, and basically you do different, like you do it step by step, and then you gain points. And then you can actually use these points to get discounts at vegan websites and things like that. And it's good for activists as well, because they can have their own invitation link, and then they can follow and see how many people are actually using it, depending on what type of activism they're doing. So if they think like, if they see, for example, street activism had more impact than something else, and they can concentrate on that or see how they can apply it to something else.
Yeah. So at what stage did you decide you wanted to do stuff on YouTube? Because I know obviously YouTube channel reaches an awful lot of people that way. So why did you want to go down that route?
I think what I like about YouTube is that it can land on so many people's pages. Unlike Instagram is more limited than YouTube, but YouTube really creates this opportunity to randomly be suggested to someone to watch when they're browsing. And I think that's really powerful. Sometimes I check the statistics analytics, and I can see like people from all around the world literally have seen like maybe one or two videos from my page, and that's really amazing that it can reach so many people around the world. And even if it's one person from a specific country, it's actually nice. So I think it's good to have that. And unlike Instagram, YouTube can just stay there forever and be recommended. Instagram, once like a few days or weeks has passed on a post, it's gone. It's never gonna, it's very, very rare that it gets surfaced again.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Actually, we've set up, obviously we've got a Facebook page, and we've got Instagram, and we've got Twitter, and we've also we've just set up a TikTok account, which is interesting. But we are we have got a YouTube channel that we're working on at the moment. But you're right, because all the other ones appear on timelines, and then they just kind of like fade away, don't they? Whereas the YouTube is just there forever. So it's a really, really good way. So in terms of other activists, who do you follow, and you know, who do you like, and why do you like them?
So I think um, there's a lot of people who inspire me and that I learn things from. I mean, I really enjoy the works of Leah Dolinger from Australia
Uh-huh.
and Amy Serrano from Canada.
Uh-huh.
I think they're really, really well organized and they really put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in general, just a lot of activists inspire me in different ways. It may be something very random from a specific
Yeah.
person,
Uh-huh.
or
Yeah.
something, I don't know, that completely could change my view on something
Yeah.
like a specific subject.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's also, I think that the way that other activists inspire me is also, they don't have to be animal rights activists to inspire me. Like I'm very much inspired by Malcolm X,
Yeah.
and he was not in any
Yeah.
way an animal rights activist. So my father had inspired me a lot because he was an activist growing up as well,
Uh-huh.
direct action activist as well, specifically
Yeah.
for human rights issues. So
Uh-huh.
I think people should really start concentrating on learning from everyone, and maybe you learn very little from a specific person, but that's
Yeah.
still going to help you a lot, because
Yeah.
if you only look up to, let's say, one specific activist, and probably because they have a big following,
Yeah.
then you miss out on learning a lot of things from, let's say, 500 other activists.
Yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
think we all have something to offer, and we should be open to that.
Yeah. So you mentioned your dad there being a human rights activist, and so was that the reason why you think you sort of, are you interested in the United Nations refugee program, or was that not, was
He
not
not specifically, because his activism was more related to the recognition of the Armenian Holocaust,
right?
which is a Holocaust. Actually, in 2 days is the commemoration day of the Armenian Holocaust. I'm third generation. My
Right.
great grandmother was a survivor,
Right.
and it's a Holocaust that remains denied by the country who did it, which is Turkey, and
Right.
and it's completely denied by the rest of the world. I think only 30 countries or 36 countries
Uh-huh.
actually admit that it was a genocide.
Right.
The others just ignore it, and or claim that it didn't happen. And so a
Yeah.
lot of Armenian activists
Uh-huh.
work on this, because more than 1.5 million people had been killed and
Yeah.
massacred in brutal ways.
Yeah.
So he had spent a lot of time
Yeah.
growing up, raising awareness about it, and hearing his stories and how they did things. And um, it just made me realize that it's really important to be active
Yeah.
about things that matter.
Mhm. So you mentioned 36 countries who recognise it. I mean, I haven't heard of it. I mean, that's, so it just
There you
goes to
go.
show. So,
Yeah.
was the UK one of those ones who recognised it, or
I don't know. The UK
Yeah,
hasn't recognized, to my knowledge. I don't think
yeah,
so. Neither has the US, nor has Germany, which
yeah,
actually a lot of the people who had
yeah,
taken part
yeah,
in the Holocaust that was done by Hitler
yeah,
were actually in Turkey during the Armenian Holocaust,
yeah, right.
and they had learned a lot of things there, and
Uh,
they had applied it to the Holocaust that
yeah,
Nazi Germany did.
right.
And to have Germany not even recognize the
Yeah,
Holocaust that inspired the Holocaust they did,
yeah,
it's really ridiculous. Even Hitler, when he was asked, how do you think you're going to get away with what you're about to do, he said, and I quote, he said, who now speaks of the Armenians, or he said, like, after all, who will remember the Armenians, as in,
uh,
like, look, the Turks did it and they got away with it, so
yeah,
I can do it as well.
yeah,
So I think that's one of the dangers. That's
yeah,
why these countries can continue doing what they do, because it goes unrecognized.
yeah. So how long ago was this then?
In 1915.
1915, right? Okay then, right.
Yeah.
So kind of digressing a little. I mean, this is obviously really, really important subject. But I kind of wanted, I wanted to talk about something which appeared in my timeline just recently. Lebanese hospital, which is
Yeah.
now serving totally plant-based food, which is absolutely amazing. I understand it's a private hospital. I'm not sure how
Yeah.
hospitals work over in Lebanon, because obviously we have private hospitals in the NHS here. I don't know
Yeah.
whether it's the sort of thing, but obviously that's a massive thing, that it's, a hospital has recognised the benefits of a plant-based diet. So what's your feelings on that then?
Yeah, so a lot of hospitals actually in Lebanon are private, just because the government is so useless.
Yeah.
So
Well, they
we
are
kind
here
of
as well, to be fair, though.
and as I said, the person who had founded Lebanese Vegans, Josh Hayek, he's the one who runs the
Right.
hospital, and he had been training the staff and everyone. And
Yeah.
with the pandemic, he just said, like, I mean, so far what they used to do is they used to tell the patients, like, this is what we have, you have the vegan version of it,
Yeah.
and this is what you have, the non-vegan version, which is worse for your health.
Yeah.
And patients had the option to choose. What he did now is he first completely veganized the cafeteria of the hospital, and then he completely veganized all the meals that are served in the hospital. So the hospital serves exclusively vegan food. He says, because I want to attack the root cause of suffering and sickness. I want to address animal rights. I want to address environmental issues, and I want to address pandemics. So he decided to do that change, and it got worldwide like headlines everywhere. But it's like, I actually went there as a patient just 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I had a very simple operation to do, nothing serious. I had, it's called lipoma, like fat storage removal. And I stayed there, and I was so excited. It was the first time I was like, I'm so excited, because we always go to the cafeteria to have lunch or breakfast. Even what, like, instead of going to a restaurant, I go to a hospital to eat. But I had never tasted the food that's served to the patients, so I was really looking forward to it. And it went really, really great.
It sounds like a hotel.
It was so nice. And obviously, because he knows me, like they pampered me as well. So
I mean, nice. The hospitals, I mean, the staff are absolutely brilliant, but obviously they're massively underfunded, and veganism has not just, it hasn't even been considered, And I know that if anybody, we have this a Facebook group called Vegan Food Network. So when you, if you go into hospital, they'll give you kind of like the rights, what you have to ask for, and what the notice you have to give and everything. But fundamentally, you have to go into hospital and give them notice that you are vegan to make sure that they can give you the food. It's not automatic, which is just ridiculous. Because like you said, there's so many benefits, the health, the environmental stuff, but all of those come back to the animals. So the animals benefit in every way. But it's just crazy that you have, sort of health professionals still not getting on board with the like animal safe and plant-based diets.
That's true.
So what's next for you? Then it's the final question now. So what's next for you?
So I'm still working on an ebook that I wrote last year. It's just been taking time because, fortunately, I've had the opportunity to have it translated to 19 languages. And I have to format each language one by one to make it all look exactly the same, which takes a lot of time and also a lot of effort, because a lot of the languages I have no idea what's written, and I have to make sure I'm doing the formatting the right way. So that will be out, and it will be, of course, completely free to download. It's about logical fallacies and animal rights, for people to understand how logical fallacies are shaping the way we see other animals. And I'm also working on everything with Lebanese Vegans. We launched, actually after the explosion, we opened the first in the world, Animal Rights and Vegan Support Center. It has a free vegan cafe. People can eat there for free and donate if they wish. We do food distribution every Thursday to the needy and to the homeless. We just did clothes distribution this week. We launched the first ever billboard campaign in Lebanon with 17 huge billboards targeting millions of citizens per month to raise awareness about pandemics and animal agriculture. And we're offering free nutritional guidance through the hospital for people to go vegan. So we're offering that for free as well. So all of this takes up a lot of my time, but I actually really enjoy doing activism through a community versus doing activism by myself. I mean, I would still do that with lectures and things like that. There's no other way. But I'm really happy to be doing this as well.
It sounds as if you have obviously your political issues and everything in Lebanon, but you're so far ahead of us with everything else you're doing. It's just absolutely brilliant to hear. It really, really is. I mean, we are kind of sort of with our so-called democracy, and the so blinkered with the obvious things, because there's so much money involved in animal agriculture and everything. But it's just we should look at other countries like Lebanon and see what they are doing, because you're doing absolutely amazing stuff. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I really think every single country where there's activism should have their own animal rights center. I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. So that's all my questions for now. So thank you very much. It's been absolutely fascinating. I know we kind of digressed quite a lot, but it's really, really good to kind of like get to know you a little bit as well about other things which I haven't thought about,
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say from everybody at Northeast Animal Rights, you know, thank you very much for giving up your time, and, you know, very best of luck with everything you're doing. You're absolutely amazing. So keep on doing what you're doing. We really love watching you and hearing you as well. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. So this is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights saying goodbye, and thank you to Seb Alex.
Thank you.